What can you do if your tenants want to end the tenancy early? They want to move out of the property before the end of their fixed term tenancy contract. As a landlord, you've got two very simple options, which I'll go through with you now. And at the end of that, I'm going to give you a really important piece of advice that all landlords should follow in this instance. But before I go through that with you, I want to say, if you're going to need to find a new tenant for your property, then please use my letting agency. Because all of the tenants we move into our properties go through a very strict 23-point checklist, which means all of our tenants pay their rent on time, they look after the property, and they stay long term. And that's what we all want as landlords. So if you're going to need to find a new tenant, click the link below and we'll have a chat through the options. Or you can email me. It's tom@soanegroup.co.uk and I'll talk through the options with you. Now, if your tenant has said they want to leave the property early, they want to end their tenancy early, then here are your two main options. And as I said, I'll give you a piece of advice at the end, which you should definitely follow. Option number one, you can agree with the tenant that you will terminate that tenancy contract early. You will allow them to leave the property before the end of the fixed term tenancy contract. However, that is your choice as the landlord because that tenant is in a contract with you. That means they are bound by law to adhere to the terms of that contract until the end of the fixed term. Now, if you do decide to terminate that tenancy contract early, then here's a really important piece of advice. You are within your rights to insist that the tenant pays for any costs involved in terminating that tenancy contract early. For an example, if it's going to cost you some money to re-let the property, then the tenant should pay for that. If it's going to cost you any other money in re-letting that property, then again, you can insist that the tenant pays for it, but do follow the terms of the tenant fee ban. That is really important. You don't want to get yourself into trouble. Option number two, you can decline that tenant's request and you can insist that they uphold the terms of that tenancy contract until the end of the fixed term. And that's really important to know because it's a contract. That tenant is bound by law to follow the terms of that contract until the end of the agreed period. Now, if the tenant does request to end the tenancy early, I would recommend speaking to them, finding out why they need to leave the tenancy and making a decision based on that, because there could be a really good reason. It could be that they've had a serious change in circumstances and need to leave the property, or they can't pay the rent, or whatever reason. Definitely listen to why they need to leave the tenancy and make your decision based on that. But again, your options are really simple. You can either terminate the tenancy contract early or you can decline and see out the terms of that tenancy contract. Either way, I would recommend listening to the tenant, finding out what the reasons are and making a judgment based on that information rather than just knee-jerk reacting and saying no because you're worried about re-letting the property, finding a new tenant. That's what my letting agency are here for. That's what we do day in, day out. We find good tenants that pay the rent, look after the property and stay long term. If that's what you want, definitely speak to my lettings team or do it yourself or find your own letting agent. Either way, definitely consider that you can ask the tenant to cover those reasonable costs. So I hope that helps and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.